Hello, and good afternoon. I'm Walker Eisenhower,
And I'm Jeffrey Cruikshank.
and together we stand against universal child care in Kentucky. Now, while the idea of increased economic freedom may sound appealing, all of us are economic students here, or at least taking an econ course, so I believe we're all familiar with the concept that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
This free lunch of universal health care is not only costly, but may also be rotten as well, leading to economic, psychological, and developmental harms.
And we're going to show through our arguments how this lunch fails to live up to the standards of utilitarianism and natural law theory, and we're also going to show some of the practical concerns when it comes to economics of it and the social impact.
First, we're going to talk about utilitarianism. We believe that the benefits would be increased workforce and boost the economy, which will be outweighed by the negative impact of child care outcomes, such as speech. It also impacts social and behavioral issues as well. Also reduces parental and child care responsibility.
As my partner, Mr. Cruikshanks, was saying, we believe that utilitarianism seeks to weigh the benefits versus the cost, and we believe the harms in this case vastly outweigh the benefits of this economic freedom. Now, a little bit on natural law theory. Natural law theory states that there are certain truths or laws in nature that are somehow findable to us via reason, observation, or just instinct. We believe that if you look through the lens of history and psychology, and even just instinct, that you can find that throughout time, humans in general have been better off with a parent or a parental figure caring for and raising their own young, rather than divisioning of that labor for one or two caretakers with many children. We believe that this also has to do with the psychological principle of the golden period.
And the golden period basically talks about from years 0 to 5, how that's the most important years for childhood development and growth, and how if the child isn't around the mother, it could seriously affect how the baby develops and learns its social skills and motor skills and things like that.
As my partner was saying, these laws are like laws for a reason. That's not something that you have to follow, but it's something that you should follow because it's innate to our nature. Now we'll move on to a bit more hands-on and practical arguments to back this up.
Here are non-moral arguments. How it could cause damage, cause childhood developmental damage, the economic harms, and potential governmental overreach. First, we'll talk about the damage to childhood development and how it affects child development and growth. Studies show at 15 months of age, more time spent in any type of child care was associated with an increased risk of insecure infant-mother attachment relationship, meaning the child and mother connection is growing apart. Relating to the golden period I explained earlier, when the child and mother are growing apart, when the child grows, or even in those early ages, it could experience resistance from the mother, especially when they're not around often. So when they see their mother, when they haven't seen them in a while, they're more resistant and more
They have generally negative social outcomes, and there's even further studies to back this up. For example, a study in Quebec, which Quebec tried a similar program to what's being proposed here with universal government subsidized daycare at a very low cost. It's nearly zero. And they did a study to actually see how the children are affected during this. And they extended this study all the way with follow-up studies through the 20 years later through these individuals' late teens and even until they were about 20. Now, this study examined nearly 5,000 individuals, and across time, both in the short term and especially in the long term is what matters, there was increased levels of anxiety, increased levels of aggression, and increased levels of hyperactivity in those who were in this daycare versus those who were in a control group of similar circumstances but were not enrolled in the daycare. Furthermore, there was another study that hits a little bit closer to home, or furthermore, there was increased crime rate by 30% in teenage crimes among those who went to this daycare versus those who did not. And a study a little bit closer to home, Tennessee actually did a universal pre-K program fairly recently, and a long-run study on that examined the effects of it out to 6th grade. The effects include negative cognitive development effects, such as lower test scores, low in science, math, history, all those types of things. And they also showed lower social scores and more disciplinary infractions, less school attendance, and other variety of negative social effects.
And this can also lead to fewer social skills such as respecting personal space, taking turns, and reading emotions.
Next, we'll mention some of the economic harms.
Looking at this from an economic viewpoint, government estimates that the cost of Kentucky Universal Daycare to be tens of millions annually. And when things are funded by the government, it raises taxes for the residents living in that state. So our tax rates will be raised for the rich, the middle class, and the lower class. The middle class and the lower class will be heavily affected by the tax burden, and there will be the classes using the child care programs the most. So it's a double burden on them, opposed to the upper class who can afford the tax hike and are more likely to look for private child care, or will just raise their children on their own because they have the economic means to do so.
I see you saying this provides benefits where it's not really needed, and it also provides harms where it might hurt the most. Therefore, it would not just shrink the income gap. In fact, it might widen this income gap between those who choose to stay at home and raise their kids versus go, because not everyone's going to use this program. Many people in the lower class and middle class would like to still prefer to stay at home to be able to raise their own kids. And we can support policies that perhaps like more government mandated leave and things like that. Many other countries in OSEC have that. But we believe this child care is not the solution, because now the people who what's best for their child and believe that they can provide that to them themselves are an economic disadvantage where they're paying tax dollars, they're paying more money for a service they don't use. So it's going to only widen the gap for those who still choose to take care of their own kids. Also, the government overreach can affect many things in a couple ways. One is that it can limit competition. When the government chooses to provide money to fund this service, it won't choose it to provide it to everyone, because there will be certain restrictions, regulations, and different things like that that develop and come and are often influenced by cronyism that on who they give the money to, and this can reduce competition because now everybody who's not provided with this government money is going to be a much less attractive option, and they'll usually either have to go out of business or raise their rates, which just reduces the choice for you, the consumer. Finally, by opening up or by inherently linking government funding to early child care, we open up the possibility for indoctrination. Now, I'm not saying this is a guaranteed possibility, but in general, when you give government the ability to do something and someone in charge sees an opportunity to influence things to go their way, it oftentimes happens. And throughout history, you can look at each and every one of the Axis powers. They have an early education program directly linked to the government. Most dictatorships and most fascist regimes, they usually have early education directly linked to the government. So if it opens up the possibility for sometime down the road, sometime later, if we get a bad president, we get a bad governor, we get some people in power who shouldn't be in power, they might be able to use that influence to really shape your children in the most formative years of their lives in a way that they probably shouldn't be able to. Now, in conclusion, we believe that we should stand firmly against government-funded universal daycare in Kentucky.
We've shown that universal daycare will pose a severe economic burden on Kentucky taxpayers. Furthermore, it will harm the very children it seeks to benefit. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to the rebuttal. Have a good day.